3, 2, 1.
Live from the Rob Christensen Radio Network Satellite Studio, it's Jim and Rob Overanalyze the Movies. Oh, and nobody's gonna want to hear that. Welcome everybody to my channel. My name's Rob, co-host of Jim and Rob Overanalyze Movies, the movie podcast for people who love to talk about movies as much as they love watching them. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Steve McQueen's, the first episode in Steve McQueen's short limited series Small Axe called Mangrove. It's here, let me just pull up the log line here. Described by the CBC as love letters to Black resilience and triumph in London's West Indian community, Small Axe is Oscar-winning directors Steve McQueen's limited series of stories of hard-won victories in the face of racism. The first episode is Mangrove, the story of how repeated harassment of the West Indian owned and operated Mangrove restaurant by London's Metropolitan Police led to a protest march and a violent confrontation with the antagonistic police, and culminating in the historic 1971 trial of the Mangrove Nine for incitement to riot. It's like we've seen this movie already. Anyway, folks, there's that. We'll start with, let's get the ideological ingredients out of the way. On the story side, did it pass the Bechdel test? Absolutely, I would argue, even though the two women may have started a conversation talking about men, they continued in what was a very personal moment. Further on the story side, does it have a class consciousness? Absolutely. Slam dunk. Is there class analysis? Again, absolutely. It's certainly from a race politic lens, but it's definitely what I would call left-wing class analysis all the way. Then on the production side, it's a union production. It's a tough one. I'm not sure it would get a reframe stamp, but I'm not sure it wouldn't. We'll have to wait for the reframe organization. It does have a Black woman of color lead. She was the main build person, Letitia Wright. So they get their minimum 2 points in that subject area. The rest of it, I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to wait for reframe to chime in on that. So with that out of the way, I think it's time to bring in my co-host, the man with the most, the man who knows what a good tasting roadie is, even though he hails from St. Boniface, Manitoba, Mr. Jim Chilboyko. How you doing, Jim?
Good. According to the movie, I'm just liming with the limers, man. I stocked up on Jamaican and Caribbean slang, I guess, through this whole movie. So, no.
Gotcha. Well, listen, I think before, of course, we get started, everyone understand we are in the spoiler zone. So everything you hear past this point, we're not even going to apologize. Jim, it does look like we've got a few people watching already. We've got one person to say hello to already, Richard L., and I suspect Katie's around as well. Hello, folks. Richard says, hello, folks. I'm watching from home while Katie is listening in from her daily walk. Excellent. Well, Katie, I hope you're enjoying the walk. Great time to get one in. It's supposed to go to minus 22 plus wind chill tomorrow. Right. So, keep soldiering on. Wow. Looking forward to that moment where you're able to join us during the actual chat. All right. And anyone else, feel free to chime in. Love to welcome you here. You know what, Jim? I think the next part for us really is First thoughts.
First thoughts.
What? Whoops. What are your first thoughts, Jim?
Well, this was one of my first thoughts was that the restaurant, as it tells us at the end, closed in 1992, and I was in Notting Hill in 1991. So it's one of those. Why did I not go? But anyway, I was also living pretty cheaply as well. So this was something that I had wanted to see. These the Small Axe trilogy, or not trilogy. Five-logy. There's 5 of them anyway, and
Quintology.
Thank you.
The quintessence.
Steve McQueen, who directed. Most people would probably be aware. 12 Years a Slave, not to be confused with the star of The Great Escape, Steve McQueen. But anyway, I heard the first thing I heard about was the John Boyega movie. John Boyega as a young Afro-Anglo cop trying to break into the policing ranks. That's, I think, one of the films later in the series. But I was sort of attracted to this project and just to see its take. As we've discussed before, a lot of the times, something that's purported to be a film about the Black experience, like Biko, ends up being starring Kevin Kline,
as interpreted by the nearest white person they could shoehorn into the story.
Exactly. And this one was pretty devoted to not that. It had a lot of great roles for a lot of Black stars that you may either not be familiar with or familiar with. The interesting thing, there's an 11-minute documentary on the Mangrove 9 that you can find on YouTube, and the resemblance, that the casting that these folks did is quite stunning. But
sounds good.
Yeah,
so
really good. I was really pleased by this movie. It took me to a different place and a different time. I thought it it didn't do a lot of the typical things when you're in England. It just pretty much focused on the Notting Hill neighborhood, which is kind of a funky neighborhood, famous for a Saturday market that a lot of people go to. But I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah. You know what? I couldn't agree with you more. I think I'm even more enthusiastic. My hot take is this is the movie The Trial of the Chicago 7 could have been, but chose not to be. Mm-hmm. And it was funny. I did in our thumbnail, because it's about this an experience of a racialized community, suffering through all of that as they're trying to maintain community cohesion. And it's a couple of middle-aged white guys from Canada. It's like kind of, but I was one of the things I was really surprised at. Not as much, not just how I got into this movie, Jim, but how it resonated with my own upbringing. And I don't mean that. I'm talking about the politics of the movie, which was very much how I grew up. My dad was a trade union radical, so they all come from a very similar kind of space. He was radicalized in the early 70s through the steelworkers and then the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. So a lot of this stuff I heard going to, when the postal workers struck in 76 or was it 75, I remember being at those, dragged to those things, me and my oldest kid brother, and there were people driving by throwing beer bottles at the picket line, eh? So some of this really rang true to me in a way I did not think it would. I'm like, and yes, this is the movie that the Trial of the Chicago 7 should have been. They set it up. They didn't make it about the trial. They made it about the whole story so that when you get to the trial, you clearly understand what's going on. Whereas, when anyone, I'll make sure there's a link somewhere, maybe right about here, for my hot take on the Trial of the Chicago 7, which is still an outstanding movie. Oh, yeah. All right, Jim, you know what? Let's move on from first thoughts then. I suspect we've already answered this question for you, but you know what? Let's make it official. Is it worth your time? What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. You know, if you look
yes
at
or no?
yes,
Is that a fulsome yes?
Yes,
Sounds like it.
Fulsome yes, yeah.
And I agree 100%. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Get it in your queue. It is a BBC co-production, and I think Amazon bought it. Like, so anywhere else where Prime is, it's an Amazon movie. Where like in the United Kingdom, it's a BBC production. Yeah, watch it. Watch it now, folks. All right, let's take a quick look at the chat. We're in good shape here. Yeah, Jim, what where do we want to start? Do we want to start with the story? Do we want to start with maybe Steve McQueen? Do you want to start with the storytellers? You kind of were getting already into that about the performances and everything. Yeah, why don't we talk about the storytellers, Steve McQueen and that outstanding cast? You good with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So
I will now take off me trying to cut you off and testify, brother. Sure, I'm as enthusiastic as you, but I want to hear your hot takes first.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, that's an interesting take, and one that I agree with the Chicago 7 movie. This is it's slightly episodic, but it seems sort of a little bit more of a no holds barred, I guess. I don't know if that's the right phrase I want to go with, but there's a real sort of commitment here to the. It feels both lower key and sharper than the Chicago 7. Not sure exactly how that's achieved, but maybe something to do with the heart of it. Not that the Chicago 7 doesn't have heart, but no. On its own,
an outstanding movie.
Yeah.
Just missing something.
Yeah. With this one, though, it really lets the story sort of speak for itself. There are some interesting choices. There's an extended shot after one raid of a colander just sort of rolling around.
But, I'm kind of wondering, though, like, okay, well, then let's jump ahead.
Well, just
talk about the story.
Well, yeah, just in terms of Steve McQueen's choices, some of he allows things to breathe a little bit, and he as we're always talking about, and there's extended shots and extended scenes. And one of the most effective scenes was at one point about 3/4 of the way through, when the group is threatened to be kind of cut. They're trying to divide them, basically. And it's an extended shot. It's almost like a theater scene. And Letitia Wright's characters, her chin is quivering as she's saying to the restaurant owner, Frank, she's saying, how can you consider this? And I thought that was a devastating scene. It was really sort of a point in the movie where decisions have to be made, I think. And
but this is like, those choices, the way McQueen chose to layer everything, when you get there, it's you buy every character's mood. We got to see Cricklow's in his performance, and I believe who portrayed Mr. Cricklow? Was it Shaun Parks?
Parks, yeah.
Yeah. So in his, like, the way that they presented him, the way he built that, you bought that he was really struggling. Even and Letitia Wright, because they're all under such stress. And I think that's what McQueen really effectively built, was how hard it is if you're in the dock, how much stress, what the stakes are at all times. You never feel like it's hammered on you either. Like you say, it. Yeah. The guy lets a scene breathe.
There was another interesting choice when they all filed back into a room after some court action, and all it is a shot of the floor and the shoes, basically the shoes of people as they're adjusting their seats, and it's like a minute long, and I think that's that's a nice little touch. Anyway, so some people aren't as patient with that kind of thing, but I'm in for the ride. I'm in. So McQueen knows what he's doing. So
yeah. Well, what did you? Let's go back to story. Where we'll give up on the tellers.
yeah.
What did you think of some of the choices made? Like, I really did buy. I really appreciated that there really is a first act showing showing us what he was going through as a restaurant owner, giving us hints to a rather adventuresome past, about, hey, this isn't that restaurant, which actually makes me think of a couple of current Winnipeg restaurateurs and their reputation from a previous restaurant, owning a previous restaurant. But that whole first act, it really is setting up the place, him, the community, and some of the lower grade crap they're going through.
Yeah, and I sort of really I felt that they, only having been to London once, that they captured it quite nicely, like with the light and just the look of the place and the sort of the feel. Music, I think, is something we can't overlook on TuneFind. I think there's about 57 different tunes that are credited Toots and the Maytals, and the Small Axe comes from Marley's song as well. So it's just really nicely captured, and I quite enjoyed the first act. You seem to have disappeared. Are you still there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you go on.
Okay, sure. But I should mention the kind of an interesting little note that I wanted to add to this. Frank Critchlow, his daughters.
Hey, upside down.
Oh,
you keep going.
Hey, Dan. Two of his daughters became actresses, and you may know one if you watch Avenue 5, which is the Hugh Laurie science fiction comedy. She one of his daughters plays Billy, who's probably the smartest person on the ship. She's the engineer, and she's kind of a never thanked and constantly frustrated, and she's the one that basically solves all the problems and gets none of the credit. So it's a great role. She's been on Doctor Who, and she's sort of a British, more often than not, television actress, and she's quite good. But so there's a little bit of a pop culture addition there.
Here, one comment to this. Richard's got a couple of comments here, though both based on true stories, and I'm assuming that he's alluding to, or he's referring to the trial of the Chicago 7. Though both based on true stories, Small Axe Mangrove seems more gritty, more real. And then he follows it up with a further comment. Maybe this comes from the in-your-face police raids and conversations. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, it was. The raids were almost got to the Monty Python stage, because there'd be, one scene of celebration or a card game, and there'd be a police raid. And they'd be like, "Oh, what's the lunch special? Police raid." there's about 25 or 30 minutes in. It would just be like a scene in a police raid. And I guess they were just going to show how much harassment they were undergoing, to the point where there was a scene of joyfulness. And anybody who watches The Walking Dead or even, say, Jaws, when you have a moment of levity, you're usually punished for it. So it's Frank, and it's the aunt with the toothpick character and another worker in the restaurant, and they're all kind of having a nice little sing-along in the middle of the day. And I fully thought, I thought this is exactly like the Robert Shaw scene in Jaws, where he's talking about the Indianapolis and they end up singing, and then the shark attacks. I thought, oh, here comes a raid. The raid didn't come, but anyway, it was kind of I was expecting that kind of setup. But the police raids were pretty constant, and the character of Frank Pulley, the police constable, comes across as a real good villain. Like pretty irritated by a lot of villains. You know, they try too hard, or they're genuinely not very menacing, or or they come on too strong, or whatever. But this one was well handled. I hated him immediately, and he proved to be a fairly good foil for the rest of the cast there, I think. But yeah, it was it was one of those movies too. It's a little bit hard to watch because it made you mad. You know, I just, you know, in the sort of the Mississippi Burning kind of way. You're just like, these guys. But
well, did you find though, Jim? You know, did you find though? What I found fascinating was, and this happens here in Winnipeg, that our police are no different. In the 70s and even in the early 80s, the Free Press would still do, you know, pieces about police like Pulley, who were presented as, you know, they knew how to fight with the, quote, breeds, close quote, on Main Street, and how wild it was. And we now know, well, what that meant was the same crap he was doing. The same crap Pulley was doing. The same crap current police do now when they're caught on radio. Like there's, you know, and even there, it's funny, like, because it's not like the stuff was happening when he's shooting the movie, but it's the same, you know, the police, when they're being threatened by the people there, they really do go, you're not us. The response is so full, so over, like Pulley, I think, in a movie from 20 years ago, we might be thinking, well, it's a little much. Only now it's like, no, there is cartoonishly villainous as that. They're on radio. They're seen on camera. They're defending themselves as they're trying to take down constituted authority. Like, they are this bad, you know? They're letting rioters into the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. So I think in some ways, the comedy there, or not the comedy, the reason he's bang on is because now we know there are just too many of them like him. 1970, 2020. So much improvement.
Yeah,
you know?
Must be horrifying for you know, if for people who have seen, you know, who've been alive and witnessing this stuff in 1970 and then now. The interesting thing too is that back then, I don't know what now. I believe bobbies are not armed. You know, they have their truncheons or their sticks, but they don't have guns. And I thought, boy, I wonder how much worse something like this would have been if there were guns. I mean, it's probably easier to shoot somebody to death than to beat them to death. And I don't say that lightly. Also,
what have we seen? What have we seen? You don't. I mean, one guy literally just choked him to death by kneeling on him.
That's true.
You know, another death was just they threw him in the back of a van and drove around aggressively. Like, I mean, these thugs in uniform know a million ways to hurt somebody that doesn't involve shooting them. That's true. You know.
That's true.
So I don't think that makes any difference from time to time. You know.
Yeah, that's a good point. The other thing too is that although the documentary I was referring to earlier, it did have footage, is that you didn't see a lot of media, you know, in the recreation. You didn't see a lot of media at the riot where you might have these days, and also, of course, no, you know, cell phone cameras and things like that, and you know, it wasn't. I mean, there's obviously some film. And it's kind of interesting. It's only an 11-minute film, so it's if you just look up Mangrove 9 on YouTube, you can find it. But it's interesting. Yikes! It's pretty demoralizing too in a lot of ways, I think.
So, what do you think, though, as far as the film goes? Yeah, like, I mean, And some of it is, you can get so, like you said, there's certain films where you get mad watching it. You get caught up in the emotion, which I think is exactly what McQueen wants you to do. He wants you to feel their frustration, their fear, their and their anger, and even that sense of futility. Is it going to change? And for most, it doesn't actually. Like those people did. There was some progress made, but at the same time, they took care of Notting Hill a different way, much like they do here in North America. Gentrification. Like you said, there's this wonderful Saturday market and nice white people free ranging, with their cool hipster artist friends. Like, I mean, it's not what used to be, from my understanding, a working class neighborhood. And I did like the way that he brought in, especially you see it in the film, especially in the first act, but at the end of the movie, we're seeing those pictures and even some pushback from, black and white community members themselves about, you're knocking these. We're all going to be going into a big concrete council estate. All our properly sized homes are getting knocked down, so we can put a freeway through it, which is very reminiscent of the way those neighborhoods were destroyed in New York City or any big American city, where they're like, we'll shove all these people into projects or council estates, and everyone else who can, they bugger off to the suburbs, and it's highways as far as the eye can see.
Oh yeah. They wanted to do that in a number of places in Canada, but ultimately didn't go through. But I like that. There was kind of that almost kind of streety energy from it. It was all these quick cuts of black and white photos. I had actually forgotten about until you mentioned it, and I sort of liked that, along with the music, the energy that sort of brought. They did a couple of things. They showed a couple of Jamaican and Haitian resistance leaders. Paul Bogle was one. I'm just reading this off my sheet. Jean-Jacques Dessalines from a couple hundred years ago in Haiti. The what they call, I believe, the slave uprising in the early 1800s. And that was kind of neat. Just sort of, and you could see that there were pictures of these guys on the wall of the restaurant, so that was kind of a nice little touch as well. And then there was a little close-up of them in case you had missed them in the background. And the idea, that I think they really did really well, is that they are that there's a community there, and they are a community that is opposed or like really under pressure from outsiders, including the police. The like, whether it be from the night game of, hey, if you pull an ace of spades, you gotta go arrest somebody, which it's like, it's so gross. Of course they did that. I'm sure there was some royal commission where, well, what do you mean? You're actually admitting the crime. Okay, really? That's a game you guys play. Yeah.
Well, it's part of hazing and team building.
Oh yeah. Go to it, Rook.
Yeah, exactly. What did you? Was there anything that didn't ring true to you?
Yeah, I wasn't pulled out by anything. I mean, sometimes when they show a judge, and it's interesting how similar the judge was in this, in the mechanisms of the character to the one in Trial of Chicago 7. They're both sort of kingly. He says my court, the my courtroom, and in which the defense, the young defense lawyer says, wait a minute, your courtroom, and just that sort of regalness, and then also whenever they're addressing the police officers, they have to they talk about all their commendations and that kind of thing, just completely irrelevant.
But even the bringing up other police officers to kind of sort of bury everyone with
Meaningless.
it's just a few bad apples. Most of them tell the truth, especially if they were nowhere near the scene of the crime.
Yes, yeah.
But
just go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you go.
I was just going to say that the interesting thing is that these guys did want to pull this off, where they sort of almost framed the Mangrove Nine. You know, they sort of overcharged them on that kind of thing, and they had a real goal in mind. Yet they didn't have the competence to pull it off, and it sort of reminds me of somebody down south that I think we've dispatched with for the time being. But it's just that you're all staring through the slit, all four of you at the same time. Yeah.
Well, I think that goes to what do we find in these things? It's a long string of, it doesn't matter how lame what I said, I was believed, so they're just, we're going to be believed. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't actually surprise us because everyone is deferring to them. Mm-hmm. Right, the judge on down. Well, you have to respect him, and we should give him respect. And and it happens in Canadian courts. It's there's that you can't just kind of question a cop. You have to really demonstrate like he's lying. And even then, much like they do in a British court, we come from the same court system. We can't actually say he's a liar just because we caught him in a lie.
Yeah.
There's the dignity of the court, Mm-hmm. What did you but going back to the only thing I worry about, and here's where we got to kind of count on the storyteller. We got to count on McQueen, and I believe, let me see if I can. Yeah, his co-writer was Alastair Siddons, and I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. That they really are capturing the time and place, but the only thing being, it's like, what do I know about early 70s working class London? Mm-hmm. I have pop culture ideas. I assumed it'd be gray and dirty most of the time, and they delivered. But how much of that is, am I really capturing the time? As I wrote down stuff, I was like, there should be dancing, and there should be curry. I'm just assuming curry. And then, of course, in the first kitchen thing, it's like, we're going to have this curry, and that curry. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, well, there we go. 3 times. I was right. But how much of that is the filmmakers delivering to my expectations based on the genre, which I kind of thought was slice of life meets courtroom drama, the fight for justice. It's still a kind of a crime movie, it's just the perpetrators, in this case with local police. Yeah, so that's my only worry is, are they really capturing the moment? I did like the fact that no one seemed to be too shticky 70s in their dress. Yeah. Their dress and deportment, Mm. But do you know what I mean? Like sometimes I finally forced myself to finish watching Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah?
Well, and the 80s part, Jim, it's offensively 80s.
No.
Exactly. It's like, it's a caricature of the 80s. We grew up then. It's like, it was never that ridiculous. Oh, wait, I remember those pants. Okay, that.
Yeah.
But even so here, that's my only worry. You didn't feel it, but maybe it was. I don't know. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I don't think it was overdone. Some of the, when you bring that up.
And that's for anyone in the chat if they know what I'm trying to dial in here.
I sort of think of over exaggerated, Good Times with the Jimmy Walker character, or Welcome Back, Kotter, where they've each got a walk,
Mm-hmm.
White characters and black characters and Hispanic characters, and that sort of like in your face 70s over the top. but this was, I think it was low, sort of high stakes and low key,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. And the high stakes are kind of interesting because when you look at if you read about the trial of Mangrove 9 in, say, Wikipedia, it doesn't appear to be much at all. Like, it's a few sentences and you think, but when you watch it and you see the stress and you see how it's impacting the people, and the one woman, Barbara Beese, is worried that her kid's going to be put into foster care like she was. I mean, this was I don't think it was inevitable that they were not charged, but they had to ride that wave, and it must have been pretty horrifying for them.
Yeah.
But,
and I think go ahead. Yep.
No, I was just going to say, in terms of the 70s aspect of it, I felt that was sort of low key, and it really the Sean Parks portrayal of Frank Critchlow. Not that I know much about him or have seen him before until I watched the 11-minute documentary there. I mean, even the end, like when he goes out for a smoke, like that's the sort of the denouement, and the case is over. They're having a celebratory dinner, and you can tell he's still uneasy. And he goes out for a smoke, and he looks to see if any cops are outside. And his buddy comes up and said, "Yeah, I'm done with England." And he's just sort of like, he's just having a smoke and just thinking, and it's a really nice sort of just
But I like that. But in that scene, there was like as he's surveying, his community is returning to some brief normalcy.
Yeah.
Like there isn't any cops spying on them.
Yeah.
Like it is the first scene where it's just, there's no police around because shortly after the beginning of the movie, it's just, there's not a scene that goes by where there isn't at least one cop spying on them. And then at the end, they aren't there. Of course, I did like the judges, and I'd like to know if that actually is in the transcript, but like, there's hatred on both sides. It's like, okay, Mr. Trump. I want to briefly, Jim, kind of cut in here. We got a couple comments in the chat. One of them I'd like to answer. I'm going to answer this semi-vaguely, Eric. Eric Thorpe asks in the chat, are you going to review the other Small Axe movies? If so, I may check them out so I can actually offer some input on the next stream. You know what, Eric, we appreciate that. That said, we just appreciate that you're here. And so thank you very much for popping in, and feel free to jump in the conversation regardless. What I will say to answer your question, that's something Jim and I haven't discussed yet completely, but we are thinking, and this is something we haven't decided on yet, but I'd love to get your input and everyone else in the chat's input. Jim and I are considering that maybe what we'll do is we'll kind of let you guys know what we're looking at for the next month, say for the next 4 or 5 weeks. We'll still at the end of the show tell you what we're looking at for next week, but even movies beyond that, so that you can kind of figure out things. Like, I understand, sometimes a week just ain't enough time because you're busy, you've made your plans. So we'll get back to that. I suspect, though, I don't know, Jim, I gotta admit, I wouldn't mind visiting this series at least one more time.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we'll probably do at least one, Eric.
The only thing I should mention is not all of them are super long. Some of them are just over an hour. I think
we may do a twofer.
Yeah. That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah. All right. Okay. So continue with the chat, Jim, before we move on. Okay. Richard. Well, at least we got one person who thinks a 4 to 5 week advance schedule would be great. We got one vote for that. Okay. The Upside Down says on the same subject, every week I tell myself I'm going to watch the movie you guys are doing, and I don't. I love the 4 to 5 week. Geez, it looks like we're going there. It's too bad Vlad65 isn't here right now, because it was his idea. He suggested it to Jim and I in an email, and it was like one of those things that's, that is a good idea. So
like lurking.
We're probably going to do that, but anyway, we'll make sure everyone knows before even next week. We'll put it in the description or something. All right. To the movie, regarding the movie and the setting and that capturing the setting, Richard says, I know what you mean about caricature of a decade. Lots of 50s, 70s, and 80s movies in particular go over the top with the dress and hairstyles. Richard feels the same way you do, Jim, and I'm hopeful that this movie that didn't do that. You know, like, it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like it feels legit, you know? Yeah. And Steve McQueen, unlike somebody, you know, he's speaking from his own community heritage. Maybe, like, he's our age. He remembers the 70s as well as you and I do, Jim.
Yeah.
Particular highlights. But at least it's something like, just as if we were to make a movie about the 70s, we could talk to 70s Winnipeg. We could talk to family and friends to capture that essence. So I think we can trust Mr. McQueen. Everything else seems so honest, so true, you know, in a filmmaking sense.
And if you look, there's no sort of like obvious, nobody was wearing anything sort of over the top. There was some big afros, but there was in the documentary as well, you know, and that sort of rings true of the time there. It was interesting. And like I said, you know, if I come away with any image, it's sort of, you know, Frank and various sort of mild 70s shirts, just sort of glowering and smoking a cigarette and just looking worried, perpetually worried, you know, and
well, capturing the material, because that seems to be so important. Like, every movie sort of says, no, we'll go over the top with color and style, when it's more about, well, what was the material of the time? And I'd say polyester, and not like, didn't have to be loud, but polyester was a material that plastically pleather, that pleathery, you know, like, I mean, those cheap synthetic, you know, wear. And then some of the knitwear that you could see somebody's grandma making, you know, of the time, you know, especially for Letitia Wright's character, Althea. And, you know, it's like, I'm buying that this young political firebrand, an organizer, would be, you know, the dress the way she was. It felt legit without it being a total badge.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, it was, I mean, that's part of the fun of watching these period pieces as well, you know.
Yeah. Well, how do you mean, like seeing how they capture it?
Yeah. Or, and just the choices they make and you know, it's something that I think a lot of people are maybe a little bit, me included, not fully cognizant about. There's a little bit of an article, if you remember the day that Joe Biden, the Saturday after the election, when all the networks came out and they said, looks like he's going to be president. And Kamala Harris had this white one piece, like it was a suit and a blouse and stuff. Yeah. And for Saturday night, they went on air at about 8. Saturday Night Live costumers had 2 hours to put that exact outfit together. And so there's a bit of an oral history of that on the web where they just went, and we got to find these materials, put it together for the 10:30 showing. Anyway, but it's kind of an interesting art in itself.
Richard says he feels, it makes an interesting point here. He feels that lots of movies use exaggerated dress and hair to represent a decade. I see this as a weakness because they're not able to do it with content. And yes, I agree. He says, parenthetically, issues, language, attitudes. And yeah, I agree. There's even that moment when she's working with, and I love this, it was a great bit of context, because there's all people of the Windrush era, both that African, descendants of the British slave trade, from the West Indies, and part of the Indian diaspora, exploited labor that was everywhere in the British Empire. And when Althea's character is talking to them, your trade union has asked me to talk to you about the Black Panther movement and, this kind of solidarity community, just classic community organizing stuff, classic, maybe not community organizing a la Barack Obama, but, old school revolutionary stuff. And they have that brief moment where she's having this meeting with them. Then she goes to the bathroom. She walks in the kitchen, and there are those women doing their thing, and she notes it, but she notes it. It's a moment where she's uncomfortable. Yeah. And I thought that was so true. Not just that they show it, not that she notes it, but she's like, I've got fish to fry here. You felt her have a moment like I suspect many a woman activist of the day had those moments, where they're like, I got, okay, next mission, it'll be that. Yeah. No, that was good. I was gonna, just as you were bringing that up, I thought, oh yeah, there's another nice little bit. And like you say, Jim, we get to see it enough that we get her discomfort. Yeah. Ahmed is in the house. Jelly duck. Richard saying hi. So, this is interesting. Jim, did you find this in Richard saying to Jelly Duck, I think I read the series took its name from that Bob Marley tune, Small Axe. Have you read the same thing, that's where it's from? Or
there's a lyric that somehow that goes something along the lines of a small axe can bring down the largest tree, or that's what it's working on. Yeah.
And that totally makes sense in this context, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. Well, what if you were, Jim, to get back on our quasi agenda briefly? All the performances I thought were outstanding. There wasn't. Yeah. I don't think anyone did anything wrong. But was there any weak ones to you, or was or even in outstanding? It's like they're all so damn good. Everyone had a moment to be a real character.
I think it was, and maybe I have a weakness for ensemble pieces, but I thought it is almost hard to. I mean, Letitia Wright and Shaun Parks had the bulk of the attention on them, but there was a lot of little. I mean, all these individual roles added up to a really solid ensemble. Whether it was the aunt, the cook in the restaurant, or another one that I liked, and of course I'm going to single out a white guy in an almost all black cast, but I just for several moments, it was nice to have the I believe his name was McDonald, their lawyer, their sort of young retired lawyer who came in and just said, he was a bit of a shit disturber, and he wanted to, irritate the judge. And as soon as you saw him and you felt his confidence, you thought these people might be in good hands. It was him and an older establishment lawyer that were working together to represent them. And then, of course, the two that had split off to represent themselves. But he sort of had a smirk, and he wasn't like he knew it was serious, but it looked like he had something like a plan. Yeah. And you felt that, and he wasn't overconfident, but he was confident. And that was kind of a neat role, I thought, for him as a supporting character, of course.
Yeah. Well, and I would argue, Jim, that character, I think part of what works for him is he didn't take over. They weren't in his hands. Mm-hmm. He was supporting, it's the more the revolutionaries that brought him in. Yeah. And he's the one I think that's a great idea. You will get to do things I can't. but he's not running the show either. He's letting the characters drawn in such a way that you don't think he's in charge, or at least I didn't. I didn't feel like, oh, we all have to. He's not Kunstler.
Yes.
He's not that. This is my area of expertise. It's almost like he understands how rigged the system is, and that he's like, you know what, if you guys want change, then we got to kind of exploit this.
Yeah.
But he's with of course, it's the right crowd that brought him in. It's the radicals that did bring him in.
Yeah.
And, whereas the other lawyers who were probably, there's only a couple of those lawyers who seemed almost like a stock, well, standard white lawyer, but everyone else, like, I mean, the prosecutor, the Crown, I should say, even the judge wasn't so comically. And now, mind you, in the trial of the Chicago 7, apparently that judge was as comic, maybe even we didn't get to see as comically ridiculous as he was, as comically villainous as he was. But you bought every character. We only saw some of the cops a couple of times, but they were given enough screen time that when we saw them again, we bought them.
Yeah.
Like you weren't going, wait, who's that again? He was around before? Like, I don't think you did that with any character.
Yeah.
Everyone has enough physical screen time and enough attention from the camera that you're like, oh, this person is worthy of memory.
Yeah, no, it was well established, I thought. I was going to say, just in terms of, I just remember what I was going to say about Richard's comment on period pieces about exaggerated sort of 50s, 60s, and 80s styles. This, not wanting to distract or go off into attention, but take a look at WandaVision for anybody who happens to be watching that. So.
You know what? I'm going to defend WandaVision.
Oh, I like it. Yeah, no, but it's sort of
when we're talking about the look, I am going to defend it. It is not the same as what we're talking about. In a way, it's amping that up, but also kind of really leaning into the way sitcoms presented the world to us.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's actually really quite accurate in capturing the sitcom look. Of each of those times, which I appreciate about that. Whereas this movie is definitely going for, we want to give, it's still, I guess I would call it maybe it's a realistic or naturalistic kind of set design and cinematography and everything. We're not doing anything super stylized, which I like. I don't feel like I'm in a David Fincher movie.
Yeah.
Where something gross and cruel is going to happen.
And it's interesting too, those neighborhoods, they benefit, basically the buildings stay the same, but maybe the paint changes and what's hanging in the windows and the type of signs. And, it's, an older, fairly established London neighborhood that's, gone through some things. It's the same one. Isn't there some Hugh Grant? Who's it? Some rom-com that's set in Julia Roberts, Notting Hill, same neighborhood. So on one hand, it's the place where Black Anglo people struggle, and the second, on the other hand, it's like a cute setting for a sweet little rom-com.
Well, but I think that goes to the politic of both those movies, which is why every movie has a politic. Like, we're presented the romantic Notting Hill in the movie, the eponymous movie Notting Hill, as this is the way it's always been, and I've always been a somehow affluent bookseller with no customers, who's, in genteel poverty. Whereas 30 years prior to that film, 20 years it was what it was, what we saw in the Mangrove. And it was gentrification, like has happened, probably the most extreme example we can see here in Winnipeg would be, I would say, Osborne Village. They've gotten rid of just about all the poor people. And yeah, now they're, there's the Vanguard here in, what they call the West Broadway area. There's always been a bit of a struggle back and forth. Wolseley, they've gotten rid of every rooming house in Wolseley. Like that's an affluent hipster part of town now, and for those folks that you don't even need to know the places we're talking about. Every city has got those stories of this used to be poor. Artists moved in as the vanguard for other affluent white people to go, let's clean this place up and make it cool and safe for us. This is not, gentrification is nothing new.
Yeah.
Been around forever. Probably, I suspect there's portions of old Memphis in Egypt where it's like, this used to be a great working, great peasant part of town, and then
once the aqueducts move in, everything went to hell.
This temple moved in. So. You let in 2 Romans, and all of a sudden, they've shoved all of us locals out.
The sandal makers came in, and now it's light industrial. I hate it.
We've got a few folks in the chat that are big fans of WandaVision, and who knows, maybe that's if Jim and I do actually. I still don't think I'm going to treat Small Axe still as a film series, not a television series. It's shot like a feature. It felt like a feature. But who knows? Maybe WandaVision will be something that Jim and I, if we ever do television, and I would call WandaVision television. Maybe we'll do that. But you guys, hey, like I've said before, you guys have your own adventures in the chat. Keep it to a dull roar. Make sure that anyone's trying to get a hold of Jim and I can still. But otherwise, rock on. What I wanted to ask you and folks in the chat about this. Oh, fudge. Now I'm I think I was losing.
You lost your place?
Lost my place.
Well, how about I just wanted to mention a couple of things. Is one of the interesting things right now is that I'm kind of half watching The Ripper on Netflix, which is about the Yorkshire Ripper, and PC Frank Pulley, who's the sort of lead antagonist in this movie. He's coming down hard on the Afro-Caribbean population of Notting Hill. He's saying, we don't want your spicy food. Oh, you're destroying our neighborhoods. And I, take a look. Hey, Pulley, go up to Leeds for an afternoon and or whatever. Take a look around.
Lancashire.
Yeah, exactly. And he goes, we don't want your spicy food. We don't want your food. What kind of food is this? He goes, it's spicy food. And
you got to throw a few more things on the menu.
Got to throw a few more, like what? Boiled tomatoes? Like early 70s. Early 70s.
Traditional English breakfast with fried bread.
They should have been begging people from the West Indies to come in. I can tell you in a second, and maybe I wouldn't have been.
Well, but that is why Birmingham is now the capital of East Indian cuisine.
Yeah,
because all these people came, and folks from India, and that cuisine stayed. Yeah. That's why every English person knows where they all have a favorite curry place, because white, brown, black, Asia, wherever you are from the massive Asian continent, where your curry,
and he's coming down hard on their culture and the way you do this and the way you do this and the way you date our women and a few other things.
Of course, they're sleeping with our women.
Yeah,
I was unaware it was your property.
but I
angry white guy.
I sort of thought maybe you guys have a few other things to concentrate on besides these new interesting people that have come into town and improved your cuisine and your neighborhoods
and add to it. Bring a little color, a little different flavors.
Yeah.
Ahmed does refer to, now this is something the English do quite well, fish and chips.
Yeah.
Now I want some fish and chips. Tartar sauce. Lots extra tartar sauce. What about, I want to kind of go to, what do you think McQueen's point was with this movie? What are we all supposed to be understanding afterwards? Like,
I think it's probably something to do with the fact that, I think it has to do with the ingredients of a community, really. I mean, on one hand, it's they sort of take a look at the Mangrove as, in one way, it's a restaurant, but it becomes clear that it's not just a restaurant. Especially for the expats or the people who've come from away, is that it's a cornerstone. It's an existential.
It's a clubhouse.
It's a cornerstone of who they are, and it's not just a place where you grab a meal, but it's a place for companionship. I was going to say brotherhood, but that's not exactly.
No, it's a community hangout. Yeah. It's where you go, where you feel like the when the little old lady brings in her savings that she was saving to maybe go back home, and she says, "No, this is my home away from home now." And how important it is. And the Letitia Wright, the Althea character, referring to it as an institution.
Yeah.
And how important it is, because to attack that place, and the cop, I don't think he was like I will crush them by crushing, he's just, he viscerally, I think, understands what it is. But this is where the analysis comes in, is she gets it. It's like, no, this is more important. It is not just a restaurant. Yeah. And everyone kind of gets it. It's her and some of her fellow travelers get that. It's like, we got to make sure everyone knows to attack this restaurant is to attack us, because this is the place we feel most comfortable. We feel accepted. We feel ourselves.
Yeah.
And to attack that place is to put us all down.
And if you're a fan of anything like Anthony Bourdain's shows or anything like that, you're aware that ethnic restaurants especially are important to the diaspora, that they're important to the people that have left their home countries. But in this one, I thought it was really, that part of it was really drummed up. Like, I hadn't seen it put that strongly in anything before, to the point when they were speaking in the courtroom, and he said, one of the fellows, I think it was the Darvon character, the one that was representing himself, he said,
Dacre, I want to say.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
I'll find it.
But it was. He said, it's not Frank's restaurant anymore. It's the community's restaurant anymore. And Frank didn't protest that. I think, as he sat there, scrubbing out a pot at 3 a.m., he might have something to say about that. But, he didn't fight that thought that he may have started it, but it was the community's place. And,
Darkus,
that's it. Yeah.
Darkus. Yeah. No, I think that's part of it. I also think that part of the point of the film was to kind of show how a community can defend itself. Yes. Okay, you know what? Actually, the overt point right off the bat was, here's a piece of history that especially the people in the United Kingdom, definitely probably aimed at Black United Kingdom citizens, but even part of the folks that got brought in on the Windrush and then kicked out in a splurge of Brexit racism, to let this, hey, there was a time when we fought back. So there's that history thing and that. And when I say myth, I don't mean it's a myth. But these stories are beyond just a documentation of X happened and then on this date Y happened. But there's that myth telling that makes the story someone's own. So if you're a member of that community, you get to take that on and go, why, we could do it like they did it. And that is, I think, one of the points of this was to tell a story of a community that organizes itself. It wasn't, Althea is not, it's not Stephen Biko's savior, or like it really is it's not a tale of outside organizers. Even the lawyer doesn't come in until a year after their first trial, when it got thrown out. That these people have been fighting this fight for years. And he comes in as an expert and an entertaining one and an ally, but not the savior of them. It's still their own drive, their own community solidarity. Like even when they're having that last moment where Frank is coming close to just giving up, and you have a great deal of sympathy for him, but you get why Letitia Wright's character is right, Katie brings up in here, let's just a sec here. Katie, you date our women because we can't think for ourselves. I actually think it's worse than that, and it wasn't you date our women. I think it was even crasser than that. The intent is, they may have said date, but I think the intent is you take our women. And not that they can't think for themselves. It's like, that's our property. That's in many respects, I think that cop has, kind of like we talked about when we were looking at Christmas Crossfire, he is the worst toxic man. And we all know this guy. And that idea that his identity is so wrapped up in that a woman not thinking for herself, but acting for herself, that's just such a threat to him. And especially somebody that he puts lower on the totem pole. Yeah, I think it's darker than even you're putting it there, Katie. Of course, this white male will now explain feminism. Hashtag mansplaining. Katie, I'm not trying to explain this to you. I'm saying I think it's darker than you're even willing to put in the chat. That's all I'm saying. Back to meaning though. Yeah, like I do. I think that's part of what McQueen's trying to say is to create this myth in a positive sense, this culture story. These people can be culture heroes. They can go beyond the documented facts of what these people did, some of which who I'm sure are dead now. I think Frank is dead, isn't he?
Yes.
Sean Parks' character.
Yeah.
He's passed on. I'm sure a number of them have passed on.
Part of his funeral is on YouTube.
Oh, well, there you go. It's that. It's almost like and perhaps as coming from where he's coming from, maybe it's hey, you got to be reminded of this because it's not like the power structure has changed, like one iota. I think. Like even when we talk about our own hometown's police force, it's only when they have gotten so bad that there's some massive outrage of the community, the whole community, that there is any kind of change, and they resist it at every point. It's only the police or any of these powerful institutions that have control over others, they resist that change like nobody's business. And it's almost like part of the message, I think, in this film is, yeah, you got to remember that because they will backslide the first second you give them a chance, as we have, as our recent history have demonstrated this to us.
Yeah. was going to mention one thing that, and then oh yeah, I was actually going to read this just when you were speaking there to sort of the meaning of it. There's one point that Althea, the Letitia Wright the character that Letitia Wright plays, she said when they're discussing, when they're having that big argument, whether or not to sort of stay in the same group, just hang together. She says, this way we can show we're not just victims, but protagonists of our own story.
Of our own story, yeah.
And I think that sort of goes a long way to explaining the full purpose, a part of the purpose of this
yeah,
movie.
It's almost he's stating part of the theme right there in that character, saying, hey, we get to be the stars of the movie. We're not just chumps in the dock. And everything happens around us, and we hope we're not thrown in jail.
Yeah.
I want to go back. Now, I'd be curious what people think in the chat too. And Jim, like talking about the Bechdel test, which, I mean, it's not necessarily the most perfect thing, and that's because it was a comic artist who was just trying to make a political joke, but a joke.
Yeah.
I still think it has value. But do you agree with me? Like, we actually only have one scene, if memory serves, and that's actually Letitia Wright's character, Althea, is talking to Barbara Beese. Althea comes out and says, "Hey, how's Darkus?" So it's starting about talking about a guy, and he's like, "Well, he's getting ready for a speech, blah blah blah," and she's not him, your child. Okay, a boy. But then they have a real moment because the woman is really trying to connect with, I think it still qualifies because it's these two women just trying to, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And acknowledging, even though it might be talking about the little boy, acknowledging that as a woman, she's got more to worry about than just, oh, will I go to jail? There's the whole, there's everything that is landing on this woman. So I'm again, you and people in the chat, what do you think? Am I?
Yeah, no.
Does it kind of meet maybe if not the exact letter of it, the spirit of the Bechdel test?
I think it does, and I even to the point where, it's written as a surprise. Like, no, I was talking about your son.
Yeah.
That was kind of an interesting little sort of a hiccup. I thought, not a sort of a planned hiccup, I should say, is that it even struck me. I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting line because usually these things are so on point. They're just talking about the case, or they're just talking about this or that. I mean, I think it sort of hits the spirit of it. They're not necessarily talking about a Tom Cruise character or whether or not he can weather the challenge that's been laid in front of him or anything like that. It just it's kind of hard because of the 9 defendants. You have two of them are women, 7 are men, and that it's kind of. We were talking about a past movie. I think there's only one woman in it. It's sort of hard to have.
And barely in it. Yeah. Oh, wait, there is the infiltrator.
In this one?
Oh, wait, are we... Like, I sorry, I kind of assumed you were talking about Jim. My bad. I thought you were talking about the one, well, really 2 women in the Chicago, the trial of the Chicago 7, where one of them is actually an undercover cop, and the other is, they had a smart mouth receptionist who in real life was a real badass, a real activist that they gave no room to.
Yeah.
Here, and I wrote it down. Oh, and I got to shout out, I received, oh, good grief, I received a care package from friends in Germany. One of them, DJ Katz, Katz Records, even wearing the...
Holy cow.
Oh, wait, here. It'd probably be easier if I did it like this. I got some merch.
Wow.
And some Haribo, like German gummy bears.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
Not sharing those with you people. But I wrote it down, and I was like, there better be more women doing stuff. Letitia Wright looks like she's doing stuff, and it's like, oh my goodness, she really is. And she is so outstanding in this without ever once feeling fake.
Yeah.
Talk about not just great direction. Like this is light years ahead of what she did in Black Panther, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh yeah.
That's great Marvel kitschy girl, almost a girl power thing. Yeah. Whereas this is like, no, that's if you're involved in the community, you know her.
Yeah.
You might be a little afraid of her, like a force of nature in a meeting, And
I didn't question. I think the other thing. Oh, sorry. You're adding?
No. You go.
I was just going to say that. And I think another thing that we may not pick up on. And I guarantee there's sort of British references, and I did watch this with subtitles, by the way, just so I knew everything that they were saying, because some of it is a little bit slangy, but all these actors are probably dealing with accents that may not be their natural accent, I think. So Letitia Wright's doing a sort of a Caribbean accent of some kind. Mm-hmm. One of the characters is Trinidadian, another one is from other, they're all from.
She is Guyanese British.
Is she really? Okay.
Yeah.
But there's gradients too, right? Like one country sounds a little bit different from another country and stuff. And so that's something that I don't necessarily pick up on. It's not just that general kind of Jamaican accent, but I guarantee there's sort of little details that I miss out on myself. But that's sort of just another thing that adds, and she sounds great. I mean, so yeah, at no point did I ever question the authority of her character. Like I was like, yeah, you're
bought her. But I think to give, I'm looking at, okay, she's 27 now. She's not a kid. She looks younger than she is. But just to own that role with the confidence and the arc, all these, what could have been a flat arc movie. And I'm going to go back to the trial of the Chicago 7, where you can kind of say that there's very minimal arc for any of the characters, except maybe, what's his name? Californian, played by a British guy.
Oh, yeah, Tom Hayden.
Yeah, Tom Hayden, yeah. Where there's a bit of an arc for him. Every character has a bit of an arc, but nothing like these people do. And I think they all had, or maybe not everyone, but Letitia Wright did. The Shaun Park's character had an arc. They had to kind of deliver a performance of people who are not just affected by the issue, but affected by what happened and how they got through it and how it ground on them. Her character in a way becomes as she has her moment, her key culminating moment in, which took her shoe off.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is awesome.
What are you doing with that? Like the George Bush press conference in Iraq or whatever.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Took her shoe off. But she comes, it's like you've seen a character grow. Mm-hmm. From being the local firebrand to somebody who her liberty is at stake, and yet she can still, it's emotionally grinding her, and she can still, come through, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I'm getting a little choked up actually now.
Yeah, no, it was. I'm sort of eager to see what else the series deals with. There's the Boyega one, of course, and there's I think there's a love story, but it sort of not a. There's another one that's sort of a profile of a particular activist. I took a quick look at them, but it's sort of it's a very interesting project. So it's one of those movies. It's one of these things that I would have, as a teenager, you're like, say movies, tell me more about the world, and that's I sort of
like
tune
the way you
in.
put that.
Yeah.
Listen, Jim, I'm going to take this opportunity first to take a quick break. Folks, I do want to take this opportunity to beg for your love. Beg for the like. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Please. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, don't forget to ring the bell. There you go. We're that kind of operation. Sound effects, practical sound effects and everything.
No cost burn.
That was another thing, actually. You alluded to it earlier, but the sound of this film, Jim. Mm-hmm. The sound design was great. Like, every place sounded like it should. You heard noises when you needed to hear noises. Folks, for those of you who didn't watch last week's episode, I strongly recommend it. We had Curtis Judd on. He is a sound lighting and sound YouTuber, tech guy. He also does independent sound mixing, and he mentioned it last week, and today actually in his live stream. And I'll put a link down in probably in a pinned message. I'll put a link to his today's. But Jim, he was actually kind of going through his mixing of the show he had mentioned last week, and so he kind of walked us through some of the mixing. And I look at this movie the same way. Like, he's going for a vibe where if you hear a noise, you're supposed to hear it. Otherwise, it should just sound like it. So we hear breaking glass and broken stuff. And, when the police are raiding and causing havoc and breaking stuff, then we hear it. But otherwise, it's subdued. It's not Tenet, where everything is thrown at us and we got to figure it out. Especially in a movie, like you say, with the accent so not used to a North America, like they're not caricatures, but I'm not used to hearing them. Mm-hmm. And so we get to hear, so the dialogue, we get to hear it.
Yeah.
But other than music where it was kind of diegetic, I think it was only at the beginning, but they never once used otherwise a big money pop song, I don't think. Like a little bit of Under Pressure at the end.
Yeah. Oh, was that? Yeah.
I think it was, there's a lot of Billy Ocean, but otherwise no big 70s pop tune, which, a regular movie would blow too much money on. This is how we know it's the 70s. Listen, should be dancing, yeah.
I think there was some, the Specials, did they play some of that?
Well, I think that Under Pressure, but I'm not sure if that was the Specials or was that did the Specials do Under Pressure?
Yeah.
And I'll look it up, but
yeah.
Yeah,
I can't recall. I mean, I loved the soundtrack. It was kind of great. It made me want to break out a few of my old cassettes there, but even something like the English Beat, which came a little bit later, which is kind of fun to listen to. But
well, maybe that's what I'm thinking of too, is the English Beat.
But they're
the Beat.
Yes,
until they came to New York or North America, where they had to go. All right, apparently we're English.
Let's differentiate ourselves. Yeah. Which is interesting because one of the singers on the one of the English Beats records in the liner notes is credited with toasting, which I might have been an early form of rap, but yeah.
Oh, listen. Okay, so I'm on Wikipedia, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Here, let's. Apparently, Under Pressure, originally released as a single in October 1981, by Queen and singer David Bowie.
Mm-hmm.
Background.
40 years old.
It's a pop song.
A 40-year-old pop song.
Yeah, really. And it was when Queen buggered off to Montreux, Switzerland.
No, of course.
Never mind. Well, because here, I never, you know what, Electric Avenue. Yes, I just thought of it as an 80s pop song. I didn't know it had this real London like part of another racist police, pressuring a community and a community pushing back. And that's Electric Avenue. It's like, what? What?
Just the name brings back so many. Oi!
I mean, 80s kind of dance bar.
Oi!
I'm going to Scandals or something.
Yeah, exactly. Strawberries.
Strawberries is another one. Yeah. Wow.
But no, a very, very fine soundtrack. I need to sort of take a deeper look at it. A lot of credits there. But,
but not that. But you know what I mean? Not that really obvious.
Well, sort of like the clothing choices that nothing requires, nothing stands out too much.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, they're never mashing all of the buttons on the phone.
Yeah.
It's actually, no, we just need this one, which I think goes back to how effective McQueen is at he's letting the subject matter speak for itself.
Yeah.
Like the story, as you say, the story tells itself. It's like, I don't need to really hammer it home. We can be gentle. The subject matter is enough. Yeah. He's not heavy-handed. Like even, there's some interesting shots, but there's also interesting blocking that allows actors more physicality, allows them to be in a room with each other.
Yes.
Move within space. How many times is somebody getting up from a table and we see that person interact with people at that table? Which I was really kind of impressed with that. Or even as those two guys, the local hood, the local drug dealing gambler, and them driving and just having those moments with them just in the car, and then all of a sudden everything changes when they see a couple kids running and cop getting rousting another kid and what I don't know, like, I mean, in some ways this might be in some ways our most challenging kind of movie, Jim. I have no complaints. What can I complain about in this movie? I got nothing. This has got to be one of the rare times where I'm like, literally, well, what? Yeah. I don't know. I guess it could have been an 11 out of 10. I mean, sure, it can accept that 10 out of 10 is the most you can get out of 10.
I think we
maybe.
need to watch Showgirls next week or something really that we can rip into. Feel like a 4-hour show, but
that's not gonna happen. Well, listen, I don't know where we go from here other than just continue to sing its praises. Do you want to, before we kind of maybe dig into our notes and get into final thoughts, why don't Jim, why don't you tell everyone what we're going to be watching next week? And I can even, with your permission, if you can tell everyone what we are watching next week.
Okay, so we're going back to our Does It Hold Up series, and we're taking a look at Bowfinger, which is, in my humble opinion, one of the more underrated comedies out there. Just a great movie.
Yeah,
Frank Oz directed.
I'm with you on that one, Jim. I do, but it'll be interesting. The movie, it's not from the 80s, early 90s, if memory serves, but still we'll find out. Maybe we'll look at it and go, ooh. Yeah.
There's I mean, one of my favorite parts is the now we need a crew, and then there's a quick edit to people running across the border. It's just sort of that's one of the nice.
It's just a great running gag.
Yeah, and they're
just get in the truck.
Yeah, and they're all reading, Hitchcock on film. When they cut to them, they're all sort of
really film comment.
Yes,
like the snootiest. Well, it's not KA to cinema, but close enough.
Yeah, no, it's a great movie. Yeah. Good heart too.
I haven't been able to find the trailer or the. Yeah, I didn't. Oh wait, that's a lie. I think I did send you the picture, Jim. Bear with me.
Oh, sure.
I do want to, if it's okay with you, I'm also going to tell people we do know what we're going to watch the week after as well. So might as well give you folks a heads up. I think, Jim, we can make our decision now that we will start just publishing, as far ahead as we can go.
Sure.
Up to 4 or 5 weeks. So everyone's set. We're set. We're going to do our best to set you up for success. This is something, though, I asked Jim if he wouldn't mind just pretty much agree with me sight unseen for this bit of nonsense. And if I can just find it. There we are. Okay. Oh, my goodness. It's such a small. All right. You're going to have to trust me. It's called Space Sweepers. It's on Netflix February 5th. So February 7th, we'll be looking at Space Sweepers. It's a Korean, it's Korean, a Korean space movie. And it's called Space Sweepers because that's basically the salvagers, i.e. the garbage people of space. And it looks kind of just fun and bonkers. It's got a heisty vibe. It is Korean, so get your subtitle game on, folks. It just looks so bonkers. Every now and then you just need something stupid silly. We've been getting some pretty solid, but also pretty deep films, I think, of late. So, have
a little fun.
Have a little fun. That's what I'm up for. Richard, go back to Bowfinger, though. It's Richard. I love Bowfinger, or at least I did. Who knows? Maybe we're going to wreck that for you.
And another thing.
Yeah, he is looking forward to watching it. If memory serves, when we're first looking at this, I believe I found it on Google Play Movies. But you know what? I'll see if it's anywhere else and make sure that's in the description for when we put up the thumbnail and all that other stuff. And I'm wondering, thinking out loud again, and this is a message for the folks still with us in the chat. Do we want to set up, because I can always set up a Google form, and maybe we want to set up an email list where we can, kind of give everyone a heads up of what it is, where we found it, or some way we can keep each other informed or something. Yeah. It's just an idea, nothing I would pull out of my ASS for next week or anything, but, what do you think, Jim? Is that something?
That's a great idea, yeah.
Love to hear from you folks in the chat. We do know we have at least, we've got more than one vote for us looking at WandaVision eventually. So maybe we'll definitely take that under advisement. All right, Jim, when I say final thoughts, what else do you want to, what were some of the nuggets that you saw in the film that you want to talk about?
Oh, there's a little bit of the language. Sorry, I'm just looking down at my notes. I did take a look at Google Street View, and the number 8 All Saints Road is much to PC Frank Pulley's dismay, I'm sure, is still a Jamaica. Frank Critchlow's restaurant closed down in 1992, but it's now still a Jamaica, or like a Caribbean place called the Rum Kitchen. Well, according to Google Street View, it might have changed recently, and who knows with COVID, but it was still a Caribbean place.
Could still get a roti.
Yeah. And there is a Frank Pulley retired from the Met on LinkedIn. I suspect that. It has nothing else. It just says Frank Pulley. Yeah. So if you're doing a search, there, you'll find that.
Well, I think that's what I would like to do. I'd even like to try and find a book on the subject.
Yeah.
To kind of take a bit of a deeper dive into it. I think one of the reasons, you know what, we've all experienced this. It happens to us in Canada. It happens to everyone else. It's like, if it's about America, Wikipedia has an extensive Wikipedia entry on it. The rest of us, less so. I do, Jim, I think we do got to give a shout out to our man in Chennai, Shashank Vacheri.
Yay.
Apparently woke up real late, but joined us anyway. Thank you so much for dropping in there, Shashank. We are just moving into our final thoughts. I can say, though, at the beginning, both Jim and I did feel it was worth your time. We're fans of this flick. But we'd love to know what you think. Like, I mean, if you've got a take on it, and always good to see other folks in the chat welcoming each other. It is, folks, and I said this before, I'll say it again. Jim and I have the best chat on the internet. You know what? Hands down. Curtis Judge is pretty good, really good actually. But you know what? You guys take it to another level. Thank you very, very much.
The only other thing I was going to add is part of the joy of this movie was some of the language that, a lot of, I wrote down some. I still am not 100% what Chinaman is, which is what the hothead in the trial calls the judge and gets slightly in trouble. But they refer to Jumbies a lot, which is a type of an evil spirit. Callaloo is a kind of a Letitia Wright's character reference. It's a type of food. Kunumunu. I suspect I'm swearing really badly. If somebody's watching this in the Caribbean, but and there's a lot of that sort of bomba clot, blood clot stuff that comes from Jamaica. What's the name of the book? A Brief History of Seven Killings, I think it was, that I read very slowly a few years ago about sort of rotating around an assassination attempt on Bob Marley and in the 80s, and a very sort of violent and nasty and not brief novel, but pretty interesting nonetheless.
Yes. Oh my goodness, 706 page.
Yeah.
Doorstop.
You said brief history.
Brief my you know what.
Yeah. But it's I mean, in terms of if you, it's like reading Train Spotting, It's just like it's a fun exercise because it's different, it's a different language, different use of language. The computer comes in handy. So
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's another message from Shashank. And yes, for those of you counting, Jim and I kind of broke. Not did we just reach 100 subscribers. We kind of kicked its you-know-what. I was on another live streamer show this morning, and he was kind enough to really shout it amongst his subscribers, said, hey, let's get them over 100. And we're at 110 now, Jim.
That's amazing.
Crazy, eh?
Yeah.
And with any luck, we'll keep them, again, because you guys are the best chat on the internet. So I know you'll give any of these folks who discover us the welcome you give each other. And it's pretty cool, eh? Like, I mean, you know what, we're I was super jazzed, and it's just we didn't have enough time before the show to kind of have that moment. But thank you very much, Shashank, for commenting on it. Otherwise, I probably would have been like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, goodbye. Oh, Jim, by the by.
Yeah. I was like 93 on Friday, so that's fun. That's awesome.
We've done very well. And it happened in 20 minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I was just a shout out on another show. We were going back and forth, and I was talking about what we do. Mostly to a left-wing crowd, because I know this may shock you all, but I'm kind of left-wing. But I was talking about it, and he was like, there's only at 93. Come on, folks, we can let's get him over 100. It was like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
Milestone achieved.
Yeah, no kidding.
Speaking of which, yes, I am going to take this, just take a minute here, folks, to encourage you, and I'll put something in. He's called Dan Simpson. That's his kind of handle, and I'll put a link to his Twitch channel in a pinned comment. So these links I'm talking about, I'll make sure they're in a pinned comment. Go give him some love, and because he certainly gave me the love this morning, and I've just, I'll also put his Twitter handle in there. But to those of you who were part of what got us there, wouldn't even been close, wouldn't have even happened. Dan, Katie, Shashank, Eric, thank you all so much. If Jim and I, what success we have is so dependent upon you guys coming in and giving us the energy to keep doing this. Jim, we've been doing this for, over a year.
Yeah.
Or no, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We did it for the rest of, and we're coming up on a year.
Yeah.
We're
Very
coming
cool.
up to award season.
Yeah, there we go.
And yes, folks, we will have an award program. We're still working that out with some of our, and some of our collaborators. There's a heads up. We'll be coming to you to see how we can all work together on an award program. Anything else you wanted to talk about in those kind of those magic moments, Jim, about the show?
I just wanted to mention, there's one thing I had in my notes. One of the jurors looked like they pulled him out of Led Zeppelin. I don't know if you noticed. He often had ascots, and he had the wavy Robert Plant hair.
Yeah.
I just thought that's an awesome extra. That's some good extra work right there. I mean, you're not supposed to stand out, of course, as an extra, but he totally. Sometimes people put on extras or atmosphere players, as they used to call them in the 20s. They just throw out a wig or something.
Call them background performers now.
Yes. Oh, did they? Yeah.
That's the technical background performer. Yeah.
That guy was awesome. I just thought, and he looked a little skinnier than Robert Plant, but he was like full on Led Zeppelin styles. Really cool. But he definitely looked
uncomfortable in his suit.
Yes,
which I was buying. That guy would be uncomfortable in a suit. He's like, well, they are giving me free lunch. But, hey, it's an excuse not to be at work because it's the early 70s. Work's going to suck.
Yeah.
Not that it's such a wonder now, but you know what I mean? What did you think? There was another moment that I appreciated as they were the camera's cruising through the restaurant as he's going outside early when it's all still kind of nice. And there's a very early 70s almost, or maybe even late 70s Parker Stevenson hair, the big part over. And he's wearing one of those ties, which is really almost like a choker thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I remember that. And it was like, that. Like, not a lot were wearing it. Like you had to, but the background performer, they put in that look. They're like, no, you would be able to sell this now. Never mind in 1971. Back to what you're talking about. For myself, I was really kind of amazed at partly just how happy I was, Jim. And honestly, how happy I was that this movie was as good as it was. Because I was really kind of as much as I enjoyed the Trial of the Chicago 7, I was worried. It's like, I want to see something at least that talks about the politics, that, gives us that context. Otherwise, it's a weird kind of whitewashing. I like that the fact that that there were positive white characters in the background. It wasn't all just it's if there's a negative white character, it's the one of power. Because even then, people in the jury, most people were kind of, oh, this isn't right. This smells bad. This, people have a visceral sense of justice, and even though racist AF, even then it's like, this just doesn't pass the smell test. It's why the first case was basically laughed out of court, you know? But where the hell was I going with this?
Well, there was white
people.
In terms of the white representation.
And
there
then
was
I just kind of...
at the demonstration that were, you could see that there was,
Yeah.
it wasn't just black people. It was white and black. And yeah.
But at the same time, no whitewashing, no stripping these people of their agency or anything. I really like that. I like that it was rooted in a black working class experience of, like that it was just, and again, going back to the Althea character, this is not somebody who visited the community to organize them. This is someone like that they're all members of that community, grew up in it, that they were able to, and when I say they were able to, I mean the filmmakers were willing to let them do what they actually did, which is analyze their own experience, understand who their real enemy is, understand, because they never once said Whitey's the enemy. That constant fear mongering. No, they were very clear. It's the cops that we're pissed at. It's the rigged justice system. It's the power structure. They were, at no time did they ever went, oh, it's white people, which is why I think like you had white characters in the neighborhood who they were, connected with. There's still poor children play with other poor children. That they had that and that understanding, and that McQueen highlighted that. I am just so happy. Like, this is definitely early in the year as far as the politic of the film, like from my political perspective, definitely the one to beat now. Whereas the trial of the Chicago 7, as good as it was so bourgeois or petty bourgeois in its analysis, or in its lack of analysis. This is the kind of movie that if any of those guys are alive from the original Chicago 7, I think they're all dead now, eh? How many Tom Hayden's still alive? I looked it up
there must
there might be a couple of them.
Anyway, there's some of these folks are still alive. But.
Yeah, they'd be comparing the two though and going, "Oh, why couldn't he made that one?" I mean, boy, that could have been our movie. Yeah. I'd be like, where's my Steve McQueen? And that's what I want to ask you. That's what I want to ask people in the chat. Once I welcome a little Shaun, welcome. Lost in the Real, folks, is in Lost in the Real, but found in our house. Okay, we're just some back and forth here. What I wanted to ask you, and folks in the chat, and especially Canadians in the chat, we have Canadian filmmakers have made, the CBC's made a couple of okay, and I really do mean okay, movies of the week about, I'm thinking in Manitoba, the J.J. Harper. I don't think we've really seen a film about Oka, the Oka crisis. We have seen a couple really good movies about the Catholic Church and the scandals in Newfoundland, but we haven't really seen a Canadian movie about the residential school horror. Mm-hmm. Or even tales of Indigenous Canadian pushback or African Canadian pushback. Like, and I'm thinking, just because we were the end of the Underground Railroad didn't mean we were the end of former slaves' problems. Sure. We were not. We're like, we will treat you all slightly better, which is still pretty shitty. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering. Like, I mean, am I missing something? Am I tuning something out? Or can you think of any Canadian films that really treat these subjects from a Canadian racist past, as well as, I mean, even the Americans, they have Matawan. From more of a working class perspective, they've got I Left Up My Heart at Wounded Knee. Remember, isn't that the title? Like, I mean, the other countries have been able to kind of go and give it the real feature deep treatment it deserves.
Yeah.
Maybe decades late, but still not that late. And here we are, like, I don't see it.
The and I suspect it might be sort of well, even Australians deal with issues sort of better, and they make big screen productions regarding their sort of history of racism and that sort of thing.
From the 80s and 70s.
Yeah.
Like, when was the fence one? Rabbit Fence.
Rabbit Proof Fence.
Thank you. When did that come out? 1980, whatever.
Yeah. But it might have been it might be one of those issues that's maybe it's everything siphoned down south. Maybe they're dreading all the talent. Maybe
Sorry, okay, they came out in 2002.
There are. I mean, there was a two. Oh, okay, there was a two-parter that was the CBC ran on water. I think it was a Walkerton thing, and that's different, I know. But they sort of, there's a little thing. Elijah Harper had a made-for-TV movie, but
that's what I mean. They,
for the big screen, I think, or even and also this sort of place name number, the Chicago 7, the Mangrove 9, the this 4. We tend not to seem to have those types of court cases.
We don't have those big show trials.
Yeah.
There's where the power structure, let's say, recognize, we're going to look stupid. How can we just...
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying
we're
to think.
We're going to all quietly let this go away.
I mean, has the FLQ even been dealt, the Quebec...
I think Quebec filmmakers have.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about that either. I'm looking to the Balmoral Street Research Irregulars. Katie and Richard regularly see Francophone, like Quebecois and Francophone Canadian cinema, as part of their being bilingual, as opposed to a tourist French aficionado like myself.
Yeah, that's something I need
who's
to do
slowly but surely transferring his francophone love to a portion of Hesse, Germany, or Hessen, Germany, right around Darmstadt. Because hey, I've gotten treats.
There we go.
Treats and merch. But yeah, I is there been that Canadian treatment? I don't think there has. I think we would be hard pressed to find it. Ahmed does ask, what about Canadian actors? And he mentions Mike Myers and Jim Carrey. It would be interesting to see either of them take on a role like that. But then they'd have, you're almost stuck being the evil white guy, probably with a British accent. It's almost... and it's so fraught with peril. Steve McQueen comes to this story with that credibility of, being black from that community, so it's, he learned that on some auntie's knee. Whereas we're, is the Canadian, especially the current way Canadian film is funded with that minimum market trigger, is Canada actually ready to look like the bad guy?
Yeah.
We have
one. I mean, we have
because we do have a courtroom thriller in a way with what happened to J.J. Harper.
Yeah, the for those that don't know, the sort of the unofficial or whatever father of Manitoba is a man by the name of Louis Riel. Who's buried a 5-minute walk that way. And
as the president of the Provisional Government of Manitoba.
There's an opera based on his life, which I don't think gets much play, but I think CBC back in the 80s did probably a 2-night, 4-hour mini series or something like that, featuring Dave Thomas and John Candy as British guards, filmed, of course, in Ontario, not Manitoba. And you have to think, yeah, maybe it's time we sort of gave it some money and did another one. I don't think we tell we could do a whole show on Canadian stories that aren't told, right? I mean,
and maybe, you know what, Jim, that'd be an interesting show to do. Kind of the anti-Canadian stories that we'd like to see or that we think should be seen. Especially for those Canadians on the chat. What do you think? Jim, Richard does, knew I could count on the Balmoral Street Researcher regulars. Richard chimes in, big Quebecois movie on the crisis, the FLQ crisis, was called Les Ordres. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Mostly deals with the police using the FLQ crisis to round up and arrest any activists they didn't like.
74, where did they film it while it was going on?
It was close, eh? Well, you know what? All of them was still around. But this is, and maybe though, I remember the old man talking about it, like we're talking in the 70s when my political education started, as an 11-year-old, because, that was my crazy upbringing. But, like the weird, they were rounding, especially trade unionists. So the president of the Quebec Federation of Labor into the clink. But then they let him, he's literally doing, of course, smoking like they all do, literally doing a press conference from his jail cell. Because like just that kind of that weird incompetence that we see in failed, like comically incompetent police state, attempts to crush resistance, like that, it's almost like they're like, oh, well, we don't want to go bad as, the padlock laws in the 50s, Union Nationale. Who was it? Who was the premier in the 50s in Quebec? Union Nationale government, padlock laws. Richard, help me out. Chat, help us out. And this is we've gone way off. Way off. Who knows where we've gone?
I thought this was a movie show.
Okay. But yes, that is going back to what I was saying earlier, Jim, I really did appreciate that this had politics at its heart in what was a political event and a political trial. That it had that it showed how this community knew what it was, how it educated itself about its own identity, how they were the protagonists of their own story. I get choked up. This is why I watch movies. When it just hits every note right. Like it really does show how talented Steve McQueen is, how talented those actors were, how like solid acting and solid direction that is selfless, like really is, we're going to service the story. We're not going to be super stylistic. We're not going to choose scenery. We're going to be in these roles. How good it can be. It'll be hard for this is one of those I could see next year still only coming up with 3 movies I really liked and this being one of them. It's a hard one to beat, especially as it hits all the buttons I love being pressed on me. Maurice Duplessis. Maurice Duplessis. Thank you very much, Richard.
I knew it was there.
And he was larger than life. Look at this. Funny comment from Richard L.
Yeah.
Funny comment, Les Ordres, sort of like Bowfinger. While the crisis is going on, there was a guy off to the side with a video cam. Well, you know what? Maybe it's something, Jim, maybe we got to dig into our own Canadian filmmaking past and check this flick out.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's put it on our possible list, eh?
Sure, yeah. Definitely.
Alrighty, everybody. I think we're. Does anybody else have final comments if they saw the film? I know some of you didn't. If you didn't, Jim, yeah. Look, I mean,
Yeah.
oh, it's on Prime.
Yeah.
It didn't cost you any money. Jim, would you agree with me? I felt it felt like a feature film. I think I could have seen this in a theater.
Yeah.
Not that you have to, but it felt like a theater movie.
Yeah, a good look, good soundtrack. I mean, seeing it in a theater would be awesome with the soundtrack that it has too. But yeah, no, it had a look to it, and you know, if you know Steve McQueen, he's. I mean, if you've seen 12 Years a Slave, right? It's definitely worth a look. And he's a guy at the top of his game too. And I can't imagine just sort of pumping out 5 fairly quick movies of quality like this, and although pumping out is, I'm being a bit casual there, but
well, and also he's also a visual artist. He's, it's one of those people when you hear about them at first, I'm suspicious of. It's like, oh, you seem like you're, one of those chosen ones where it's like, I do this and I do this and I do this. But the guy has shown like a real body of work and growing confidence in that work. What the hell else can he do next? Like,
well, who voluntarily, an anthology of 5 films? Okay.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, even looking at his Wikipedia stuff, 1990s short films, visual art. Then it goes breakthrough as a filmmaker in the 2000s. 2010s further success. 2020s. Then he starts. And then I banged out this 5. that 2 middle-aged white guys in North America are raving about, along with others. I'm sure we're not the only ones.
7-8 hours of fairly heady material. It's really close to my heart. No problem.
Yeah. Yeah, and you look, it's just, a real body of work, a great, this is, he did Widows, for crying out loud. That I thought was like a different kind of movie, but another one. It's not super stylized, or it's definitely, it fits more the genre, the look, and the vibe. There is some style to it. That's how heist movies work. But all right, folks. You do know what the next 2 movies are next week, so go catch this. I'm telling you right now, Bowfinger. I know you can't. I know you can barely see me, but Bowfinger. And then after that, it's that Space Sweepers. I just love the ridiculousness of the title, Jim. Space Sweepers.
I wonder what it is in Korean. Probably something different. But
I think I've seen Victory. But there is some sort of heist or race or, I don't know, some bonkers Korean space sci-fi bullshit. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's next week, 9:30. Sorry, Jim, I'm going to take over the screen. So next week, next Sunday, that would be the 31st of January, 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Universal Coordinated Time -6. So hope to see it. Go check that flick out. It's on, like I said, it premieres on Netflix on February the... Bowfinger. Sorry, getting confused here. Bowfinger is on Google Play Movies and other your favorite streaming services. So go check it out. Watch it. Meet us back here next week, same place, same time, and we'll dive deep into Bowfinger. Yeah, it looks like, Jim, we're gonna be enjoying some nonsense for a couple of weeks, which I think good. Is
keep it light.
You gotta balance things, right? It's
the Biden years. We gotta keep it light.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, look at this. We've got lost in the reel as, okay, I'll watch Bollinger
He
before
created-
next week.
corrected himself later.
Yeah, I know it. But I still like saying it. Bollinger. It's like, oh, champagne. Before next weekend. I've never seen it. You got to see it, and we'll all find out if it still holds up.
Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin at the height of their powers.
I so hope it holds up. Ahmed's got to go. Have a great day, everyone. Jellyfinger or Jelly Duck 100 says. I really am mushing up all the words now. Ahmed, thanks so much for popping by. Really appreciate it. Au revoir. Et vous aussi. Et toi aussi. We're friends now. I think we can be that unfamiliar. The Upside Down says, I've never watched it either, but I'm going to watch it before next week. Yes, Jan, it's worth the time. I hope. All right, Shashank just missed most of the podcast. Shashank, thank you for coming by anyway. Yeah. I do think it's worth, even though we just sing its praises more and more, I think it is worth checking it on the rewind, on the replay. So, and you know how to do that. And next week we'll see you next week. And thanks for popping in. So yeah, Jim, if it's okay.
I want to know what Shashank has for breakfast, because I had a dynamite masala dosa on the beach in his state one time, but I suspect it's not Lucky Charms and toast or something like that. But
okay, Shashank, what did you have? What did you just have for breakfast? And what did you have for breakfast when you're in his state? When you were in India?
It's called masala dosa. It's almost like where you have it's almost like an Ethiopian thing where you have the sort of the flat bread and you use it to pick up you have the injera kind of thing. It's something similar, and you pick up various toppings. It's spicy, and then your fingernails are all yellow with saffron or something, and you have a nice strong coffee. Oh, best stuff. Best stuff.
It was just to really hit the
Hodi dosa. Okay, I'm definitely looking this up.
Yeah, we got to Google that up. All right, Jim, I'm going to send you to the green room. You'll stick around?
Yes.
Because we've got more movies to pick, so we can set our chat up for success.
Thanks, Shashank.
Shashank says it's very spicy stuff.
That's a great way to start the day.
Spicy cuisine. Oh, and Shashank, this is why you need to go watch this movie. That's another thing we didn't talk about. How much food comes up, not just because it's a restaurant, but how it's part of the identity, part of that story, and how it is we only do spicy cuisine here, as the bully the bully brings up bangers and mash. It's like
boiled potatoes.
Exactly. All right, Jim, I'm sending you off to the chat. Oh, wave goodbye.
See you later, guys.
All right. Okay, everybody. Once again, thank you all very, very much for joining us here tonight. Thank you for being part of us, exceeding 100 subscribers, 110 so far. Only 900 not even 900. Only 890 to go before I might get monetized. But thanks very much for coming. Thank you, Shashank. Thank you, Upside Down. Shaun, great to see you here. Eric, really appreciate you popping by. Of course, Katie and Richard, thank you both for coming. Katie, I hope your walk was good, and thanks for chiming in later. And I appreciate your... Please forgive me for possibly mansplaining feminism to you. I didn't mean it that way. Really need to find a woman co-host. Okay. Dan, thank you. Ahmed, thank you very much. You know what? Please, everyone, attest to the fact that I sang Vlad's praises. Vlad65 for giving us that great idea. And looks like I caught everyone in the chat, and And yeah, I think that's about it. I'm gonna, I think it's time to pull the music down, and let's see. Yeah, cue the outro.
I've been